We are back from Bitcoin Nashville, and I cannot tell you guys how amped up we are to be, well, one, back in Atlanta, but after this convention, this is the biggest energy I have ever seen at a Bitcoin conference. Multiple presidential candidates, like 10 plus senators, governors, congressmen, congresswomen. The energy that was at this conference, guys, has left us just in complete wow. Today I have, of course, DZ and TJ with me on the sides here, as well as Drew, the Drewthinator. I feel weird being in your spot, man.
We're in the,
this is new.
Yeah. We're in the basement set, obviously getting the set put back together upstairs from everything that we brought to Nashville. But huge shout out to everybody in the chat: Laserface, Manawak, Deborah Archer, DCA and Prey, Danny Conman, One House Productions, KO Kev, Objectively Real, Reality Objectively. That's a pretty funny one. But yeah, good to be back. Incredible show, incredible conference, extremely bullish. Again, I know I'm always the mega bull here on the channel, but it does seem like we are not bullish enough. I mean, U.S. reserve stockpile, strategic reserve asset, bills coming in. I mean, the news just was nonstop. Josh actually was sitting down with some of these people before they actually spoke. I mean, you got kind of a sneak peek at some of the information, right? Is that right? Yeah.
I had the opportunity to meet Vivek Ramaswamy and a lot of the senators that were actually involved with all of these political committees. So it was really cool to sit down with them. Vivek, I got to answer a question, but this was at Senator Blackburn's little conference here. This was a fundraiser in the morning of Trump's speech.
Yeah, I heard Aaron was saying that he came up to you. You were in the middle of a conversation talking about something. He said you could see from the pictures, like you caught his, whatever you were saying got his attention. He walked over to you and was saying something about it.
Yeah, I was talking. I asked Senator Blackburn a question about the DNC and funding, because the whole conference, Vivek spoke, or the fundraiser, he spoke about kind of having this courage and starting to stand up and, speak about the things that people might shun you for. And in this case, a lot of this is politics. A lot of this is Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And his two biggest things he's looking at for the elections was, of course, one, you need to vote. And two, if you need to either do something as a mayor or a governor or run for something, do something. Stop being the person that's just a keyboard warrior and actually go out and try to get involved with their committee. So I was talking to her about the DNC funding TikTokers and just asked for a quick photo and everything. You could kind of see his face light up. I have a bunch of photos in the lives thing, and he comes around and he introduced himself, and then I got to ask one question. That was about it with that. But with Vivek, it was really cool. It was just really motivational to see him speaking and how involved he is with local communities. Just his speech it just amps you up. But what was really cool is right after that, I got to go behind the stage and speak with Senator Lummis. This is, of course, with Samuel Arms here, and she is directly responsible for all of the strategic reserves kind of ideation that has taken place over the last 2 years. And she's the one that even came out right after Trump and was like, hey, we're going to have this path to, buying 1 million Bitcoin, or was it 5 million Bitcoin? It was a crazy amount. We're going to get to it in the story today. And we're still all in, shell shock from the conference. But I got to actually ask her about the strategic reserve before she announced it. And she gave us a lot of really cool alpha, talked to her a little bit about BRICS and the downfall of the United States dollar and why it's important that the United States, of course, not only backs the US dollar, but gets its political spending. The issue with the deficit and our debt in the United States, which we're going to pull up the debt clock because there's a birthday today that nobody's talking about, which is the national debt clock. We hit $35 trillion in national debt today. So let's get some happy birthdays for national debt in the chat here. But yeah, this was a key topic. It was we need to get this spending under control. We need to start, controlling this deficit and making sure that, we hold not only our politicians accountable, but of course the corporations and all the lobbyists and that are involved, making sure we're spending our money on the right things, social programs, etc. And so really cool to see, really awesome to get to be behind the stages and just, be able to ask these questions firsthand with our politicians.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you feel underdressed?
No, but yes, at the same time, I'm definitely going to suit up for, this next convention. But
now, when you say suit up, you mean like Drew with a flak jacket?
No.
Yeah, kind of, I was wearing, I was definitely one of the only people not in a suit in the fundraiser, but I really, it's not about that to me. It's about just your presence. And if you can actually just go up and introduce yourself to these people, you're going to outbid everybody around you.
I'll say there's one place. If there's a place where they value the words coming out of your mouth, they value the thoughts in your mind more so than what kind of shoes you have on, what kind of suit you're wearing, it is a Bitcoin conference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of the words coming out of their mouth, I do want to come back to the chat a little bit. We had a couple naysayers in there saying, oh, we can't cross 100K, let alone 150. And I want to point out, if you're like, yes, we're going to experience some resistance, like 70's giving us some resistance right now, but I really do believe, and if you don't, I feel like you have to understand what you're betting on. If you don't believe that the dollar and the debt issue is a problem, that's the only way we're not going to cross 150, 200K Bitcoin in time. Because again, the dollar is being printed at an alarming rate. It is eroding its value, and that's part of what sends the price of Bitcoin up. So when you say Bitcoin can't hit this price, what you're really saying is I'm betting on the dollar to hold its strength and dominance. And so like, if you think about it that way, like, you know, like it should change your perspective on what you're thinking.
That is a great framing. You're not betting on the strength of Bitcoin. You're just betting on the weakness of our money
U.S.
print.
dollar. Yeah, I mean,
U.S. dollar of our government. And it reminds me of my bold prediction I made with Biden. It wasn't that I was anti-Biden. It was like you're voting for his health. You were betting on his health.
Right.
And I was just saying, you know, I think the guy's a little bit older. I don't know if that's
And,
wise.
and when you can see weakness, and you can, like, this is a trend that's been going on for many, many years, decades at this point, and it's to the point where all politicians are talking about it. It's a major problem. That it should be inevitable to you at this point, and if it's not, just keep watching this channel. You'll get there in time, because I think a lot of the announcements they made, and I think it was great framing by Cynthia Lummis to say building a strategic Bitcoin stockpile or reserve is part of what is going to help the U.S. debt problem. I don't know if it's, she said 50% by 2049 or something like that. That seems pretty bullish, but anything that's going to get it going back in the right direction obviously is strong for the United States. It's clear that we want to be a market leader in this. It's clear we want to keep Bitcoin mining and creation and manufacturing here in the United States. It's really fun to think about Bitcoin manufacturing, Bitcoin mining as manufacturing, because it's a totally different concept, but it really is manufacturing in a digital age, and they're clearly committed to it. I think it's going to have a dramatic impact on prices, and they're going to be protecting self-custody, which is amazing. And huge shout out to our partner Arculus. They showed out big time. They sponsored the mixer we had. We had to sit down with Tom, their head of product, while we were out there. So Arculus doing a great job at promoting and championing self-custody. It's one of the most important things in Bitcoin and crypto. So if you don't have one yet, obviously we have code DC10. The link is in the description. You guys can check that out. But it is more and more important as time goes on to self-custody your own assets, as everybody in the world is going to be coming for Bitcoin now, not just the United States. We're going to see nations trying to accumulate, and it's going to get the accumulation is going to get aggressive.
Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway of this conference. You know, if 100K Bitcoin is out of the question, that's happening at some
it's inevitable
point.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. The difference is when is it going to happen? It's not an if, it's when. And so this is why this election cycle is so important. You know, you guys have been going, why is it starting to, roll over to more politicalness, or, more of a, I get into politics a lot here, but it's because of what we heard at this conference. It's because of what we heard from, actually Trump coming out on stage, but as well of RFK. The importance of this is the announcement of the committee he announced, a strategic committee around the development and the entrepreneurship really in the United States, pro-regulation that is going to benefit people building in the U.S. versus leaving the country. Also, it was the biggest moment for Bitcoin, as when Donald Trump did this, Hong Kong immediately came out afterwards, a nation state, and said that they might start exploring a strategic reserve as well, because the reality of the situation is no country wants to be the first to adopt a strategic reserve, but they for sure as hell do not want to be the last.
Absolutely.
And the last time China was the last was when they came off the silver, or came off backing, their currency in silver in like the 1920s, 1930s, and their economy was in shambles. So they know throughout history that it often repeat itself, and that is honestly, that's famous Mark Twain's word, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
I'll tell you this: nation states will not care if Bitcoin is 100K. Nation states will not care if it's 200K. They will continue to buy. And to further, emphasize this point, I just pulled up what is the cost of a pound of gold. 1 pound of gold is $22,000. Can we share my screen here? I'm not even sure if we can here.
Yeah, we can.
$22,000. But do nations, TJ, Josh, do nations buy pounds of gold or they buy tons of gold?
They buy
tons, and they're dropping $55 million per ton. And so, a nation state won't spend 100K on, some Bitcoin, and because they'll have to buy 1,000 of it. They don't care if they got to buy 1,000 Bitcoin at 100K. They're buying tons of gold, and 1 pound is $22,000.
Yeah, and what people don't realize too is, Trump's administration, like I'm going over guys, it's not about the president. This is something I had a debate with many people at this conference. It's not about, yes, it is 100% about who you select, but it's about their cabinet, it's about their committees, it's about the development behind them. And this is somebody that wants to drill, baby, drill. You've heard those famous words. And what you have to realize what that means is greater adoption for Bitcoin miners. You see a lot of this conversion. If you guys were at this conference, it's not altcoins, right? It's a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, but it's Bitcoiners and like just Bitcoin companies and then Bitcoin miners. And every single Bitcoin miner there is learning how to approach negative energy, which is these clean markets I've been covering for so very long at this point. They're converting wasted energy. They're supporting power grids. They're converting landfill. They're doing so much. And so as we produce more and more energy in the United States, that's only going to benefit the value of Bitcoin itself as well. So I want to get to the market update here because we have a lot that we're going to just keep going off on tangents here. It was a really good conference.
There's a lot to talk about.
We're all on our toes.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin, $68,000, almost touched $70,000 today. And hey, this is the first Bitcoin conference where we actually pumped into it. And we did see that slight dump, but it's been holding that price action around the conference. Ethereum here, $3,335. Of course, Solana at 190. W's in the chat for that. XRP here, 60 cents. Dogecoin now up almost at 13 cents. And Cardano, 41. The top movers here in the last 24 hours. Get this. Bitcoin SV, AIOZ, Book of Meme, Bitcoin Cash, Mogcoin, Brett, eCash, and Litecoin. So we're getting the meme coins, but again, the top movers here are the OG kind of
the Bitcoin forks.
Yeah,
and I think that probably has something to do with the Mt. Gox stuff all getting redistributed. So obviously a lot more people have Bitcoin Cash in their hand that haven't had it recently. So that could be, usually those are pretty heavily manipulated assets there. So that could be part of that. So yeah, that's my pick there. But the other big takeaway I had from this conference, and I've been feeling this way for a little while, is really wanting to accumulate more Solana. I mean, I really do think Bitcoin, obviously the apex predator, Ethereum has a very strong market dominance when it comes to DeFi and actually, high security on decentralized finance applications. But it seems like Solana is turning into the clear winner when it comes to retail apps and dApps. It's already, obviously those are the three most, Solana's number 4. I guess what, BNB's 3, or is it a stable coin that's third in market cap?
I'll check right now.
Is it USDT is number 3? I could see, USDT. That's what I thought. So I could see Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana obviously being the top 3 dogs. Obviously, they're their most expensive projects, but I still think they're very safe investments for the long term, especially right now. I think they'll all 3 move extremely bullish over these next 12 months. So again, I have a decent amount of Solana, but I find myself wanting more and more Solana, even outside of other things in the top 10 that are lower market cap. It seems to start, it's getting that network effect. Now I know, there's always somebody arguing the other side. Oh, it's manipulated. Oh, some other, there's not as many apps as it, or dApps as it seems, or there's not as many users as it seems. VCs are manipulating it up. All of those things could be true, and I don't necessarily see them as a negative. It does have market awareness, brand awareness, good user experience, good throughput, cheap transactions. So there's still room for other, smart contract platforms to compete, but Solana being built with Rust, I do think has a lot of bullish activity. And I think it was even when we were talking with Charlie from BitLayer, he's clearly very heavy Bitcoin. They're building on Bitcoin. I do see an ecosystem being built on top of Bitcoin, but it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow moving ecosystem where I see Solana filling that gap at least for the next 4 years or so. And I think really Bitcoin layer 2s, they're going to do well, but dApps on Bitcoin is going to take time. In my opinion, it's not going to happen because that's just Bitcoin moves slow. You have to be extremely careful. You can't do anything that's going to present any bugs. So there's so much value that has to be protected there. They're not going to push out new things quickly. So I see an ecosystem being built on Bitcoin. It's just going to take, in my opinion, 4 to 6 years before we really see what we know is possible play out.
Yeah.
But Solana, I think, will really thrive in the meantime. That's just,
yeah, I think Bitcoin DeFi. Anduro did a great presentation, which was from Marathon, one of the largest Bitcoin miners. I always tell you guys about Anduro. It's a large layer 2 sidechain development project from one of the largest Bitcoin miners. There is money that's going to be pouring into Bitcoin DeFi. It's just a matter of time with it. It's very new. It's a very immature asset class. So some people talking about OrdiSwap. A lot of DeFi protocols that exist out there. The development's there. And those were the only ones that were at the conference. And those are the only ones that institutions are actually interested in. So I do think it's going to be, really beneficial to the Bitcoin ecosystem in this bull run.
And I want to give a shout out to HoudiniSwap.com. You're trying to find some of these crazy alt Solana pairs, but I have ETH, but I need a Bitcoin layer 2. They got 4,000 tokens across all the chains. And so very, very easy way if you want to deal with something where I have it on this chain, but I want this other asset on this other chain. I guess I'll go to this centralized exchange and swap it. And oh man, Coinbase is taking all my funds. Just big shout out Houdini Swap.
Yeah,
easy solution.
It's a great product for really, if a lot of you guys don't know bridge, like if you want to deal with going from one chain to another chain without going through all the bridges, forget centralized exchanges. Like if you're trying to get from something on Solana to something on Base, something on Ethereum to something on Base, that's one of the easiest ways to get some of those Base tokens without having to learn how to bridge yourself. And it really can go from native asset to native asset, and all that. All of the complicated technical stuff is happening on the back end. It goes out and aggregates you the best price you can find. It's actually an extremely convenient tool when using for swap. So yeah, we're a big fan. Shout out to them. They're a partner here, sponsor of the channel, and it's just a really, really strong product. So if you haven't tried it, give it a shot.
There's 2 things we need to do right now, Check. We're about to jump into this news. Number 1 is smash that like button for what we're about to cover, because Gary Gensler, yes, Gary Guzzler, looks like he's no longer going to be in a position of power under Trump's administration if he is elected president. Trump pledges to fire Gary Gensler on day 1 and establish strategic U.S. Bitcoin reserve if elected or re-elected here.
Yeah.
This is what gave him probably the loudest roar and standing ovation that he has seen. It was so good, he had to say it twice.
He was shocked, I think. It was fun. That was one of my favorite parts from the speech, because I think he's used to obviously speaking in a lot of different audiences who probably don't follow the SEC, probably may or may not even know who Gary Gensler is. And he says, like, yeah, on day 1, I'll fire Gary Gensler. And like you said, it was a thunderous, he literally was like, wow, you guys like really don't like Gary Gensler. Let me say that again. But I think that part was really funny. We should pull that clip and do a short, because it really stopped him in his tracks. And he was just like, okay, y'all really don't like Gary Gensler.
Yeah, I want to see W's breaking this chat right now. That is what needs to happen. Just WWW. I will not be able to read it coming into this, because this is a huge problem, right? We saw every single party was at this conference. People are going like, oh, it's very, very right. No, it's very, very libertarian at Bitcoin conferences. And most of them usually lean a little bit more to the left. A lot of them like RFK at these conventions. Unfortunately, I think RFK he's been pretty suppressed. I think he'll get probably a cabinet possession or, take over the healthcare sector under Trump's administration. There's the W's coming in. But ultimately, what we saw out of this was the realization that we need aggressive change from the commissioners of the SEC. These are people that were established and backed by, of course, like Harris and the Biden administration. They were put into their positions of power, and they've gatekeeped Bitcoin ETFs. Some people go, well, Gary's the one he's passed the ETF, so we got to give him credit. No, he is gatekept, of course, Bitcoin, after trying to make it an issue for the last 6 years or whatever 4 years that he's been in his office at this point. So seeing him get removed and seeing a pro-crypto candidate be established is going to drive a lot of value to the entrepreneurs and the growth of crypto and Bitcoin in the United States. That the number 1 thing we deal with as entrepreneurs in the United States is fear. It's not, can I actually do this in the States? It's just, am I going to be forced out of the States? And so getting a new line of commissioners and regulators and a committee that is backing, because guys, let's face it, Trump was very humble on stage. He said he really doesn't understand, everything that happens here. He said, that the crowd were the high IQ individuals, that the crowd, for even through the previous time he was elected, we were the ones that realized that, devaluating our dollar and electing this kleptocracy of politicians that have printed endless amount of capital, increased increase inflation year over year, month over month for the last for all the way back to 1913. It was going to be a failed structure and a failed system. This is very bullish for, of course, entrepreneurs and money flowing to the States. And being the largest Bitcoin miner, which is what he talks about, people were trashing on Trump when he was like, he said that we need to make Bitcoin American. And it's like, no, okay, look, let's break down what that means. Let's say if we have, 18, 19% of production and we have, 10% of the supply, there is a lot of value and growth, and we're going to welcome all of the growth of that sector.
Now, what are your thoughts
country.
about paying down national debt by buying a bunch of Bitcoin today? What are we just going to sell it?
No, well,
and then what?
So it's not a paying off the national debt problem, in my opinion. It's more just actually it's going to take decades to fix the deficit.
Well, it's a multi-decade plan.
Yes.
Yeah, I think their proposal.
Sell it in 2
I think their
decades.
proposal is to have enough assets to legitimize the debt more than anything. It's like you said,
Yeah.
it's not to because their plan is to stockpile it. It's not like they're dumping gold to pay debt. It's like, okay, well, we have enough gold on our balance sheet to justify X amount. So I think that's their plan is, hey, we have more than most nations already through confiscation, which he acknowledged. We're also committed to producing more than any other nation, and we're going to buy more than any other nation. So as long as we hold, kind of like gold, he who has the gold makes the rules. That's how we got into the position of power that we're in right now with the dollar backed by gold. If we can have the dollar backed by gold and Bitcoin, or an actual have reserve assets to justify the dollar being used in the context that it is, I think that's their plan. And they know through USDC. I mean, and I will say this, they know the buzzwords, they know what to say when they say he'll stop the United States will never have a central bank digital currency. Well, they're going to repackage that. They're not going to call it a central bank digital currency. We already have what is effectively will be, I think, in my opinion, through USDC. And so
that was what I was going to jump off of was I don't think people realize. So one, they committed to not selling off any of the hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin they took from Silk Road and that the DOJ and the government currently has. So even as we start buying more on paper and adding it to that government balance sheet, the Bitcoin DeFi is where I'm like, okay, this is going to be explosive because they're going to want to be able to borrow and lend against that. And what a lot of individuals don't realize is companies like Tether, company like Circle, they're going to have larger GDPs than entire nation states and countries around the world. They're about to surpass like Germany in size. And so seeing not only Bitcoin grow as an asset class, but be able to borrow against that is going to just print more. This is the new money printer. This is the new fractional banking system. And they realize that tokenizing this not only will solve the deficit and the spending issues, but it will have this accountability aspect to it. And of course, the United States, if we're the leading provider in that, we have the regulations, we have the on-ramps, we have the off-ramps. BlackRock, these institutions, they're all the ones investing into the Circle, into Coinbase, into all these Bitcoin miners. It is powerful for the United States, and it will allow the United States and the US dollar, guys, to be the next world, to continue as the world reserve currency for the next 100 years.
Will we say, stop President Trump, it's too much electricity? And what does that mean for Bitcoin? Because a lot of people, they don't
Greta
understand.
Thunberg and she might take some photos with some police officers.
There's a strong correlation between, mining Bitcoin, having Bitcoin manufacturing, mining, whatever you want to call it, abroad, as well as energy costs. So how would you, for normies at home, how do you explain the link between so much energy, it's coming out of our ears, we'll say, stop Trump, it's too much energy, and that is good for Bitcoin? How exactly?
Well, if he does end up getting to that point, which we are at today, if you guys don't know that, we always overproduce oil. There's usually like the set bars and metrics that
we're the number one exporter. I don't know about 2023, but we've been the number one exporter roughly past 10 years.
And importer. So we have all this infrastructure as well.
Relatively new phenomenon, actually, from fracking. OPEC used to smoke us back in the day.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So what people don't realize is even if we create excess, where's that excess energy going to go? Usually it would just be wasted, and that is what is wasted energy. And so Bitcoin miners in modular containers with a Wi-Fi connection can really be set up almost anywhere on the planet. It is decentralized on a geographic scale. So it doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the mountains or if you're in the middle of the desert. If you're creating this excess energy and we need that infrastructure, you could just turn on and off switch for Bitcoin miners. And this is where you're going to get government credits potentially for being these stabilizers for power grids or, again, excess energy provider, whatever it is. There's a lot of paths where all paths lead to more Bitcoin adoption and, of course, more Bitcoin growth. And it's very, very bullish.
Well, he kind of said it if you read between the lines of his speech, he kind of gave a few different comments that say, he basically, a lot of people have been hypothesizing about Elon Musk and the gigafactories becoming Bitcoin miners. He pretty much said straight up, like, yeah, electric cars are great. We really appreciate what they're doing with electric cars. Everybody doesn't want an electric car. So he's going to, I believe, incentivize Elon Musk and those gigafactories to do Bitcoin mining. He's going to incentivize Bitcoin mining here in the United States just as strongly as they incentivized electric car production, which they've been doing since 2008, pouring tons of money into subsidizing that production. That same thing's going to happen, in my opinion, for Bitcoin mining. And so we have tons of oil, and he says, like, we're going to drill for oil. We're going to convert what was being done for electric cars towards Bitcoin mining. And the number one thing that's holding back Bitcoin miners in a lot of places right now is actually upgrading the energy grid. We learned this through our conversations with CleanSpark. The Bitcoin mining infrastructure is actually some of the most efficient when it comes to upgrading our energy grid to have a higher, more efficient production than we've been experiencing so far, because they're incentivized to do it. The cheaper they can get their energy, the less waste there is, the more Bitcoin they can produce, and they actually get paid to do this stuff. So now the United States is incentivized to do it. We're going to be incentivizing the smart people who know how to do it. We're going to be using, to Josh's point, all of our excess energy for Bitcoin production. And I think it is a perfect storm to keep most of the Bitcoin production here in the United States and really set the U.S. up as a world leader in crypto, Bitcoin. Like you said, have fun with your Bitcoins and your cryptos. And I think he's kind of, he understands, and I do think this is one thing that Trump does well, is understanding how to get smart industry leaders in place. I mean, the other thing he said that was pretty important is we're going to have crypto-friendly regulation within 100 days of him taking office. He's going to let that be written by people that are pro-Bitcoin and people that have
Cynthia Lummis's and
people that have been around. They've done their research. They know they're not just politicians trying to get a bill out there that's going to get them name recognition. This is people that really understand the pros and cons of what we're trying to do, the global incentives, the economic incentives.
No, I have a question. There could be some alpha here, because I think a lot of this energy play is actually AI, and then Bitcoin gets to ride the coattails of the AI energy needs. So we need a whole lot of energy. Oh my God, we need a whole lot of energy with AI right now. Bitcoin mining facilities are capturing that. They're piggybacking off of that. Does this mean more opportunity for AI coins relative to Bitcoin?
That's a good question, but it's so complex because it depends on.
Give me the winner. One AI coin. That's all I need.
One AI coin that's a
Give
winner.
Me one. You're only buying one.
I'm
for
just
the
going to
rest
say
of
Nvidia, because it's like all these
stock Web 2.
It has to be. It's stocks, because the stock companies are the ones that benefit off the CHIPS Plan 4 Act. Like they're the ones that are getting all the subsidies from the U.S. government, so they are already winning against these cryptos.
They're one of the beneficiaries.
One
of
of the
only.
I'll give you a weird outlier that won't. It's not a particular AI coin the way you would think about it, but I think proof of work makes a lot of sense to AI agents. I would actually put Bitcoin is actually going to be one of the number one winners from AI, and Caspa. Yes, both of those. They're both proof of work. They're both, Caspa's a little bit different with proof of useful work. We're seeing that come up very big and strong. And I do think AI agents specifically that are tasked with doing things in the new digital world, they will understand an economic trade where I can validate it myself. I can prove the work myself. I'm actually paying for the resources I need. I think
there's a world in where you have two robo-taxis and one taxi's in a bigger rush than the other, and they pay the other car 10 Satoshis to overtake them in traffic.
Yeah, get out of the way. Or I've got a passenger who's paying for speed.
Yeah, pay for speed or pay to get paid on your way to work. I'll go so slow, everyone's passing me, but I roll up to work with 400 Satoshis in my pocket.
Right, and this person paid $4 to get there, and this person paid $40. I mean, it's kind of like express lanes concept now, but it's all being handled by autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, and AI consumes way more power than Bitcoin. So what this just means is we need even more energy. So it's going to create more excess energy, which is going to create more positivity for Bitcoin mining. So I think they go hand in hand. But I think that at the end of the day, I don't know if there's going to be one winner. I think the AI sector is going to be very innovative, and so whether it's Render or Near, a lot of the AI sector will benefit from it. It just who are the ones that can stay up with the AI advancements? Are they old ChatGPT models, or are they evolving?
I think there's a day TJ will pay his Optimus $1 in Caspa to drive his kid to soccer practice.
So here's this historical moment from Donald Trump here, guys. If you haven't heard from the convention here, hear for yourself about, of course, Gary Gensler. But I want you guys just to hear the crowd here.
That's why she was an Indian. So I named her Pocahontas. Elizabeth Warren and her goons, and she's very nasty to you. She hates your people. She hates everything about you. Will keep their...
Really quick for the chat so they understand what he meant by Pocahontas there. Elizabeth Warren said she was Indian American in her 2020 election cycle, I believe, but she has absolutely no Indian American background.
Hands off Bitcoin. They're going to keep their hands off crypto. They're going to let it grow. We're going to let it grow. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman. I didn't know he was that unpopular. Wow. I didn't know he was that unpopular. Let me say it again. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler.
This was a good moment. And it just goes on for another 30 seconds. That was the moment.
Yeah.
That was the moment libertarians and everybody stood together and united at
And
that
President
conference.
Camacho, he then pulled out a pow pow and started firing it into the air. It was wild.
It was really insane to watch. The energy in that room just completely shifted, and it just... You have now Republicans, Libertarians, Democrat, like left and right guys. They all want to be a part of this committee because with the reality of the situation, anybody that's a Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what party you are on, you all understand that inflation's the issue, deficit spending's the issue. The politicians that are in their current positions are the issue. They're passing the wrong legislation. They're taking advantage of regulation, and it's just outright embarrassing at this point. Gary Gensler has used regulation by enforcement for years. If you're in the XRP community right now, you should be breaking your thumb board or your key screen right now, just smashing W on your cell phone, because these are people that have taken advantage of the crypto community for years and years and years. And now everybody's realizing, holy smokes, this isn't a scam. You remember 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 is a scam. Like every time you go to Thanksgiving or your Christmas dinners and you're just with friends or families, like, I'm not going to touch that. Dan Pina, Bitcoin's going to zero.
Money for criminals, they called it. Yeah.
Money for criminals, money laundering, all this extensive BS that we saw through for years and everyone calls conspiracy, crazies. They had so many terms for us. And now multiple presidential candidates are running for president. They are looking to integrate Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. It is a win today for not just Bitcoiners. It's a win today for the crypto community, guys.
I'm going to work on something really, really hard. If the U.S. government pays or ends up buying 5% of Bitcoin, what is that going to mean for your bags? I'm going to do the math. I'm going to maybe do some game theory, and then we'll identify, some price targets.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was talking with somebody, we've seen, obviously when retail came in and started pumping bags, we've seen when institutions start coming in and start pumping the bags, but it's getting really wild to see nations now, in a Bitcoin arms race, basically trying to collect as much Bitcoin as they can as fast as possible. And that's, I say it over and over. I don't think people are bullish enough. I think last cycle with diminished returns kind of has everybody tempering their expectations of what they can think this time. But it really, having the U.S. come out, like Josh said, nobody wants to be the first one to do it, but definitely nobody wants to be the last one. They're very happy to pile in second, third, and fourth. So I think it's going to be a matter of who can move quickly. I think we're going to see smaller nations start accumulating faster. If you see, we already see a lot of places like Singapore with a lot of financial freedom. Obviously, they've been very pro-crypto already, but I think we're going to see the more nimble, El Salvador obviously made a big statement on it, but they're not nearly as economically impactful as somebody like the United States.
They're doing like a Bitcoin a day.
Yeah, they're doing what they can do,
Yeah.
and it's gonna change their economic history forever because they were the first ones to really start doing it. They did front run, just like maybe you at home. If you're holding and buying Bitcoin right now, you literally front ran BlackRock. Now you have the opportunity to front run the United States, and if you don't take advantage of this opportunity, you might find yourself regretting it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's like it's an incredible opportunity to be able to accumulate Bitcoin before all the nations of the world start doing it.
And we were wondering, how much would it look like if they were to start buying? Because I pointed out, they're buying tons of gold. It's one thing to buy a pound of gold worth, was it $22,000? Tons are worth, I think it was $55 million.
Yeah.
Well, I just looked at what's China doing, So if you're wanting an indication of how much Bitcoin is going to be added to these national reserve asset lists, well, let's look right here. China gold reserves was increased to 2,264 tons, but it was at 2,235. So we're looking at 30 tons in a quarter. 30 tons, 2,000 pounds per ton, 60,000 pounds of gold were bought in one quarter from China. So you're wondering, are they going to make massive Bitcoin purchases? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars potentially here.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, they would be buying as much Bitcoin as El Salvador owns per day for a consecutive number of years.
Yeah.
Senator Lummis proposes to U.S. to buy 1 million Bitcoin. Yes, 1 million.
Dang.
U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis has proposed an intriguing solution to reduce the national debt, buying 1 million in Bitcoin.
No, it's reducing the national debt. It's not just saying, the debt's stronger because we have a lot of assets. So, what's the plan there? Sell the Bitcoin?
So in her proposal, Lummis highlights the potential of Bitcoin as a store of value, arguing that its deflationary nature would help stabilize and grow the U.S. economy. The current U.S. debt is $35 trillion. That is an average of $100K per person. We've seen how countries like El Salvador have benefited significantly from Bitcoin adoption. Really, what I think it just comes down to is the accountability. It stops the spending and allows us to start really focusing on growth in the United States. It's going to bring
reduce
GDP.
our national debt. Buying then selling reduces our national debt.
No, buying brings value though. So I'm talking the regulation and adopting it brings growth to the economy.
She said reduce national debt
through
I'm
economic
her words.
through economic
growth.
stability, which means GDP goes up, means we actually run a surplus, means we can actually pay down debt.
Yeah.
That's what she's getting at.
Or it means we have more assets, so let's run the debt up to 50 trillion.
Well, that's going to happen
That's what I
either
worry
way.
about. And I understand, we want to be super pro Lummis. I just think it's fair to ask some of these questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, the debt's going to go to 50 trillion at one point, though. You can't stop that. For example, it would cost like 14 or 16 trillion dollars just to establish all of your. If you wanted to go full clean energy on your vehicles for these new plugins for your Tesla chargers, etc. That was actually a part of the conversation in multiple speeches. It'd be over 14, 15 trillion. I'd push us over 15 trillion or 50 trillion immediately. So I think we're going to get there no matter what. It just slows that growth down and allows us to have a surplus.
A concrete answer. The stability then allows us to have lower interest rates on the debt we sell. And so instead of paying China / whatever country $110K off that 100K note, we only have to pay them $104K off that 100K note. Okay, that reduces the debt.
Well,
I'll give you that.
Again, if we're running a surplus instead of a deficit, if we're actually producing more than we're spending, we have money to pay down the debt. I think that's what she's getting.
Yeah, I would say that's largely disconnected from our standing abroad and our credit rating. Whether or not we operate at a deficit or a surplus. I mean, I could say, sure, tangentially connected, but I would say it's largely disconnected.
No, I think so. Think about it. Let's put it in another context, like the internet, the .com boom. When a lot of the biggest internet companies were here in the United States and created, it was one of the biggest booms, from kind of the late '90s into the late 2000s of economic prosperity in the United States.
Thinking we can grow our way out of it, though, is just a hoop dream to me.
Okay, so what's your proposal?
Oh, we don't have one. It's the death of an empire.
So DZ's theory is it all goes to shit.
Done.
So
everything.
we're going to zero?
America's going to be number 2, and it's just going to look like what
Who
happens.
takes over
when
America?
Well, who's number 1 then?
I mean, all statistics and everything saying it's going to be China. Then
No,
probably
but see,
China,
not even
China's
close.
not anywhere close.
China's got just a. China's in a
about
worse
population statistics, growth statistics.
No, China's in a
Demographics would be
much worse economic position than we are. Their debt is.
I'm betting long term on their 5th graders' education, and so there's other factors. At
Okay,
play
that's
here.
tangentially very disconnected.
I think no matter what right now where we stand is having pro-crypto regulation.
So you don't think China will beat us in GDP? That's what you're saying here?
No.
Okay.
Over the next 30
Drew,
years.
what do you say
Well,
here?
I got some stuff to tell you guys. Yeah. All right. So
You're going to go into Evergrande?
well, basically, what I see is being set up by these BlackRock organizations is a new deal for America. I don't think that America is just going to lay over and let China bull moose it. Basically, China's going to remain the producer and eventually get betrayed by India. But what America is going to do is dump 10, 15 trillion dollars into not only our physical infrastructure like bridges to handle the weight of these EV vehicles you brought up, but also a massive, massive build out of data centers. We are already a powerhouse across the world for data centers, but actually, what I see coming is America doubling down on data center infrastructure build out and essentially setting up a situation similar to the New Deal of the past, but in a technological fashion and just kicking the can down the road that way. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think too, like, one thing I give Biden's administration some credit for is going to be the CHIPS Plan 4 Act, is absorbing the semiconductor manufacturing. So even with the growth of AI and advancements in China, their semiconductor production's like still pretty far behind us. So it just gives us more advantages from a commodities perspective if you're looking at that, which would increase more GDP. But right now, my
Assuming
biggest
they never
statistic,
take over Taiwan.
well, we're still like
Which on along the
88%.
timescales of
If they take over
Fool's
Taiwan,
Errand.
what do you think happens at TSMC?
I think there's going to be some decisions to be made. Do we destroy all value with the press of a button with our kill switch, or do we not do that? And I think everyone's assuming they're going to hit the kill switch. I think maybe there's discussions. It might not go that way.
That's
folks.
what the Act's for. So it's being moved and outsourced to the states. So we've had like 20 plus massive manufacturing sites start being created over the last 2 to 3
I'm
years.
very bullish on them. I hope they do
So-
great. I want America to take over chip manufacturing. I'm not saying we shouldn't.
Well,
We should. We should put a lot of resources towards it.
And production. I mean, really, that's kind of what I'm saying is we're moving toward, and there's obviously this is all hypothesized. I mean, Trump isn't even president. These are all just things that he's talking about he would do if he was president. So if we see, though, a movement in the U.S. to move back towards production, like we have become a largely over the last, especially 10 or 15 years, a consumption-based country. And we've been consuming the goods and services of people all around the rest of the world. If we move back to production and we are the leading producer of chip manufacturing, but specifically if we're the leading producer of Bitcoin, like again, that's manufacturing in the digital age. If we can do that, it's going to have a incredible long-term impact on our ability to maintain dominant global economic dominance. There will always be a power struggle between nations to do it. Right now, we still have a strong position based on being the global reserve asset. They're not going to give that up anytime soon. And if we can be the ones with the most other assets, we will still maintain the dominance of being the global reserve asset. If and it will become Bitcoin over time slowly. But if we're the number one producers, we're the number one holders, we're the number one manufacturers, we lead the world in energy. It will continue to bode well for the United States. Everything else is a little bit numbers, gymnastics, math, whatever that comes back to debt that is unsolvable for all nations. Are we going to move off of a debt-based system into a sound money system? Probably not likely. Would we all like that? Sure. Are we moving more in that direction? Yes. I think recently we've been completely detached from a actual sound money supply. Moving towards Bitcoin will move us much closer to that. And whoever can do that the best, the fastest, they will see economic prosperity within their nation. It's been proven through thousands of years of history.
I have 2 questions. One for chat. We're going to start with the first one here. Can you name me one reason or bear case that would cause Bitcoin to collapse?
Like you're
Just-
saying, like
What would be
anything
the
in
reason
general?
for Bitcoin to fail?
Massive blackouts on internet structure? That would be a global meltdown of all assets.
So essentially
I
World War
wouldn't say,
III.
like kill it or
That
whatever.
would be we're probably looking at nuclear war with these type
Well,
of
you're going to have like
events.
those ham radio Bitcoiners, and you're like, see, we were right. And they'll keep the network alive. The network won't stop. It'll probably continue to have 10-minute blocks. But
Yeah, basically what you're talking about is like a global cyber attack globally that crashes most
yeah,
infrastructure.
it makes the blue screen of death last week.
Right,
look
there's
like
no
chicken-
water,
like
there's no
child's
power, there's
play.
no internet, there's no
Or
banks.
just maybe the blue screen times 5 or 10.
Yeah.
You thought the airport issue was bad. Imagine multiplying that by 5 or 10.
Yeah, so for me, that's like that's a black swan event. We can't. And at that point, you're fighting your neighbors for groceries and toilet paper and food, and like
Yeah, at
you're in
that
a
point you
civil
better
war,
have
right?
one of those go bags that they sell here on
That's
Basement.
right,
Yeah.
baby.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. So the follow up to that is going to be the question of okay. We know what the Trump administration is now campaigning on. Very pro-crypto legislation, bringing that back to the states. The question would be, the follow-up would be, okay, what regulations and steps if let's say Harris does win, what are they going to establish over the next 4 years? And that would be my biggest concern on, okay, is production going to get pushed out of the states? Are they going to just hurt our deficit more? Are they going to create spending issues that, we can't handle? And is there anybody that can get elected in 2028 that's going to be pro crypto? And so right now, my biggest focus is just not pushing crypto outside the United States, because we're talking tens of trillions of dollars and accessible liquidity through the derivatives markets, money markets, private equity, private credit. When you go look at, Fred.com, just you guys should use this. The Fred, this is your economic website. If you're looking at credit debt, business debt, consumer spending, everything is at all-time highs, maxed out to the max. So when you're looking at the stock market right now, the NASDAQ, it's very artificially high. It's the Magnificent Seven. Your Russell 2000 is kind of struggling. You guys see this in Bitcoin's price. Like, Bitcoin's doing really, really well, but we've all been waiting for altcoin season forever. We haven't had an altcoin season, and it's because that money, it's more concentrated this cycle, and I think everybody feels that. So it really depends on the outcome in November, but I don't think we're going to get that World War III here. And we have now Pierre Rochard, I think I pronounced that right here, breaking Democrat politicians have written a letter to the DNC asking the party to pivot away from the anti-Bitcoin policies of Elizabeth Warren. This is likely in response to polling data, the GOP bro-Bitcoin policies, and President Trump speaking at the Bitcoin conference. Being anti-crypto is almost political suicide at this point, but the DNC is still very, very strongly against it. And so, again, are you going to vote for the people that, for years have developed the anti-crypto armies, the people that have instated individuals like Gary Gensler, or are you going to vote for the people that are, on the positive side of this spectrum here? So just keep that into mind here. Bitcoin inflow surged $3.6 billion in July, while Ethereum ETFs see massive $2.2 billion surge. This is incredibly bullish for the adoption of also altcoins. I do believe in this was the Bitcoin conference. You're going to see more and more conferences and tech institutions really jump into the infrastructure plays here, that whether that's Solana or Ethereum or Chainlink or all these other layer 1s, layer 2s, Oracle providers, DEXs, there's a lot of value that can be created from this. And looking at Jelly's chart here, we can see historically, if you survive the chop around previous all-time highs, you will be rewarded handsomely. Don't see this playing out anytime soon. So, every single technical analyst out there right now, there's really not a lot of bears. Bears have, completely, put a sock in their mouth and dipped off of Twitter pretty quickly here. And, we're actually, TJ brought up something to me this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It just, the similarities going back to Mark Twain, right? History often, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often sure does rhyme. What you're looking at right now in our 4-year cycle is something very similar. So even though the macroeconomics, the microeconomics, the political, differences, everything, even though everything seems so, crazy right now, I think is the only right word for this. We are still following the same historical patterns. And so seeing that Bitcoin having occurred, it takes roughly 100 days after that Bitcoin cycle before, I believe you said, we start to pump.
Yeah, generally speaking, throughout history, 100 days after the halving is when we really start to see things move. It's usually a lot of sideways chop and accumulation. There's a lot of hype around the halving, but the day of is pretty uneventful, and the next few months is pretty uneventful. And actually, today hits day 100. For 100 days after the Bitcoin halving. So I think, it's time to start letting us stair step our way up. I don't think it's a coincidence, the timing of the conference, the timing of the speech, what we're going to see in inflows. I mean, like I said, we're going to see 70K is a tough resistance to break through, but I do think with the inflows this week, both on Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think the Ethereum inflows did surprise some people, the volume there. Obviously there's a lot of outflows from Grayscale that we got to work our way through, but it does seem like we're getting done with that faster than we did with the Bitcoin ones. So give it another, I'd say, week or two on the Ethereum ETF, but I really do think, starting today, it's up and to the right for Bitcoin. We're going to start hitting 70s, mid 70s, new all-time highs very soon. And then we move into, again, Q4, we're going to, I think, see very, very explosive moves for Bitcoin, and people forget how fast it can move. So smash the likes. I know we have about 800 or something people in here. I actually just figured out if you're on mobile, you actually have to flip it to full screen in order to see the like button. And that's, if you flip to full screen, if you could do that for us, smash that like button if you're on mobile. It helps, obviously, more people see this video. And the more people that see this video, they get to learn about Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, and we all...
Yeah, you got to help us out in the YouTube algorithm. For some reason, my algorithm keeps showing me Dodge Chargers and affiliated style Dodges. I don't know why. never owned one. I'm still just driving the Chrysler 300, everybody.
man.
I did have a buddy, a coworker. He used to leave his keys in his Dodge all the time.
Yeah.
Even got stolen.
It's weird.
Because he left his keys in it when he parked at the airport.
I can't believe it,
It was
bro.
like a couple years ago.
It
Anyways,
happens.
I digress.
Well, as we get a little bit of a pullback, because yes, guys, we're seeing, I think we're at below 68K again after almost touching $70,000, which is major resistance. Major resistance. We'll see that in just a second. We have a record $39.4 billion in open interest, suggesting imminent price
Careful, folks.
breakout.
Careful, folks. I'm seeing all this bullish stuff, and let me just bear you to death here. No, we got some bearish stuff in the charts. The monthly things are looking great. I saw too many articles saying Bitcoin's bullish, too many tweets saying Bitcoin, you got to be bullish, and now we're starting to get a little bit too bullish, everybody. I pulled up two charts. This is the parallel channel that we've been talking about forever. You just see Bitcoin's been trading around there ever since its all-time high, the 13th of March, hitting the bottom. Oh, sorry, here.
There it is.
Hitting the top, boom, coming close to the bottom, hitting the top, coming back to the bottom, hitting the top, coming back to the bottom. Folks, we just returned to the scene of the crime, everybody, as Gary Soloway likes to say, and go into the shorter time frames. It's almost like it was ordained in the cards. Now, we did open along. I closed some profit a little bit closer to the top of this range. I said this is going to be a bearish period, and look at that, folks. But let me give you a little bit of hopium here. This horizontal line right here, I think we could come back down here, so not quite bearish, and then go and
I think we're about to explode through that price action.
Yeah.
You don't think we're going to test down to 63? You think we're just, maybe consolidate, breaking against the top here?
That wick right there with that giant that was absorbed, there was a massive liquidation grab there. Look at these liquidation charts. It completely flipped the script over the
you can
over
see
this last
people
week.
getting wrecked right
We
there.
have massive. So it went through, just absorbed all that liquidity. This is on the 12 hours. So just look at this. It's completely changed.
What? Josh actually raised a good point. Too many people are looking at the same thing DZ's looking at.
Yeah.
And they're going to get liquidated if it hits that area. So.
Maybe we go back to that, that's when. And look, I'm not going to say
That's
that's
the bull
out.
case
I'm not
to
going to
it.
say that's out of the cards. But when we were looking at this last week, it was flipped. And so now we're seeing people go, bear. Just keep zooming out. So many people are starting to short the market. Everybody's shorting the market. And so there's so much liquidations piling up above us that we see this now on the weekly. Let's go to the liquidation map now and see what it looks like. Look at this. On the daily, bullish. It completely flipped in the matter of 48 hours on the daily. The 7 days, I do want to point out here, is a little bit more bearish here, but we are seeing that what we just saw, $40 billion in open interest. And when that interest, we see all this funding and all this money flowing into these markets, you can very quickly establish a new support level. And what that might be is what you showed on your chart, DZ. If we go back to DZ's chart here, I want to look at that parallel channel again.
Yep.
Would be a breakout to the upside, be overbought and overextended and come back down and retest that into true support.
Let me warn everybody, if it does break out to the upside, let me show. I think it would look like this. It would be a huge breakout where, hey, everybody, we even retested it. This is on the daily, and then it would just be a giant scam wick just to liquidate everybody. That right there, that was the exchanges making bank.
Well, that's a good point, because that a lot of times you see the little traders get swallowed up by this stuff. There's big money that is trading these markets right here. They've got all this data. They're looking at the longs and the shorts. I do think like you mentioned, we've knocked on that door 3 times. Generally speaking, the more times you knock on it, the more likely it is to open. That doesn't mean we won't come back down and knock out all these little guys that heard Trump's speech and went long. Those people. They want to drop down and wipe those out. Their liquidation levels aren't nearly as fat as somebody who's putting a $50 million long on 2x leverage. Those people are going to print off of this. And so, just keep that in mind. If you're a swing trader, if you're a day trader, proceed with caution over this next week. That being said, over the next several weeks, I think it will slowly stair step up into the right over time.
Someone in chat put a good question. Dominic G, how about the CME gap at 61K? I've been covering that nonstop for you guys, but with that, even though I showed you guys that it's like 80-90% of the times those usually close, this also, if we were to pull it up, because DZ's logged in, so I don't want to keep logging him out of it, but when you look at the RSI, the last time we had that happen was around the January ETF filing, and then I think the one time before that was when we're all the way down by like $19,000 Bitcoin. And so we got futures gaps at both those locations that were never filled. So there is the possibility that this is one of those very few times where the market was so bullish that Bitcoin was underpriced and undervalued. And so now it was, properly valued, and we don't come back and close that gap. Now, again, I'm going to say that with a grain of salt, because I would still say that is something you need to watch. Watch that futures gap, watch the liquidations. But if we do get the breakout past $70,000, what I'd my biggest factor right now would be, seeing if we can turn that previous resistance level into major support, and that could mean that we will, see that futures gap never potentially be filled.
Well, and keep in mind too, all things are possible with Bitcoin. Basically, it can move a lot very quickly. 61K is not outside. I think your chart showed the bottom of the channel was like 62, 63K.
Yeah, something like that.
So it could easily wick down, touch that thing, and then come back up. So
yeah.
No, that was the support line. The bottom of the channel is 50s.
50s. Okay, so that could be
54.
that 58. So yeah, it could potentially do that. I'm not, again, don't bet the farm on it. I wouldn't hold your breath on it. It just depends on where you're at. If
Right
you're a
there,
day
yeah, low
trader,
50s.
that's a totally different situation. If you're and most of the people who watch this channel are long-term investors, DCA. So if you're thinking about buying Bitcoin for the first time, if you're thinking about adding to your stack for the long term, it's always a good time to do that. I think the next 12 months are going to be extremely bullish. If you're looking to long and short today, tomorrow, you're going to have to do a lot more TA, listen to the TA gods and see, what they're
If
saying.
Bitcoin's $1 million, you're not going to be too upset if you bought at $66,000 versus $56,000. Your great grandchildren are still going to call you a legend.
And I've seen so many people, again, trying to time the bottom and miss out more often. Like you were just saying, I strongly believe we're going up towards, if not over 200,000 by the end of this cycle. And you're not going to really kick yourself if you bought at 28K, at 35K, at 56K, or even right now at 68K if it goes up that much. You will if you wait, or if you were at 20K and you were waiting for 12K, if you were seeing 30K and you were waiting for a lower dip, if you saw 58K and you were waiting for 35K and you're sidelined, you will regret not holding Bitcoin when we go through this bull market.
I'll buy some Bitcoin right here.
There you go. Oh, wow.
Well, wait, are you buying Bitcoin right now?
Yeah,
I want to go to a price.
1% is $680. I'll do 0.1001. All
Okay,
right,
there you
boom,
go.
boom.
Bought some
Just to show
Bitcoin.
you, all right, you could just buy a fraction, 1/1000th of a Bitcoin, $65. You know what? Maybe I'll eat lunch for the next week, and I just got myself a little bit of Bitcoin there.
Bought the Bitcoin. Well, speaking of Bitcoin and price predictions, Shaq, give me your Bitcoin price prediction for, of course, 2045. Yes, I'm asking you very far out here because Michael Saylor at the conference predicted Bitcoin could be worth $13 million by 2045 in Uber bullish keynote speech here. By 2045, the price of Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency on market cap, of course, being able to retain this would be insane, but delivering a keynote address at the ongoing Bitcoin conference, Saylor indicated that Bitcoin's macroeconomic stars have aligned to propel Bitcoin's market cap to $280 trillion by 2045. That is an appreciation of 275x. Now, while urging attendees at the annual conference to become triple maxi, Bitcoin Bulls, the MicroStrategy chairman, said Bitcoin could be valued at as much as $49 million and account for 22% of global wealth. Absolutely insane.
Yeah,
and
that's
now,
insane.
I don't know if that...
You think I'm bullish?
Woo!
Yeah.
Maybe it's because he would be quite instantly, I think he'd be a trillionaire at that point.
Yeah.
For how much Bitcoin he holds. But again, if we're talking about an establishment of the strategic reserve, if we're talking about, people and institutions finally understanding how this actually converts with energy, Bitcoin can not only clean our environment, it can reduce methane emissions, it can reduce those CO2
All right,
emissions.
22% might be a little bit high. I just looked up gold.
Yeah, but
Guesses?
gold's not
Y'all
as
wanna throw out
efficient as
guesses?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You want to throw out a guess, though?
22% of what? I don't know.
So we said Bitcoin could be 22%
I
of
see.
all wealth on the globe.
And I say gold's 5%.
The percentage of wealth that gold is?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Drew, he threw out 5%. You got a number?
I'm gonna say
Matt-
3%.
All right.
Matt
Remember,
says-
Saylor wants Bitcoin to be 22%.
Right.
So just you want to just.
I mean,
throw out
I'm
a
gonna.
number?
Matt says 65 cent. I assume
What do you
that's
guys think in
percent.
chat? Give us chat. Percentage gold is. Give us it. Hit us with it.
What is it?
0.5%.
I was
Nice.
close.
Yeah.
I was close. I was
Well,
close.
the reason why I was thinking small is because the derivatives market is quadrillions of
Right.
dollars. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah.
And
I was not thinking included because what isn't that? That's it's quadrillion.
0.5% is what gold is.
Yeah, if you want to be the 1% of gold, you got to own $5.8 million, and you're a 1%er. That's like being a Bitcoin whale. You be a gold whale. You're gonna be looking like Mr. T, though, man.
Yeah, you just have to figure out where you're going to store that gold and how are you going to get it to your house. That's how many tons is that in gold? 1% of gold.
Yeah, be
Oh my-
careful
dude.
walking around certain cities. At least
Yeah, I
in
don't
the
know how
US.
that. You'd have to make your house out of gold.
Well,
to
and
hope-
I think what they're betting on is, again, most of the value that they put on the books right now is debt. It's paper value. It's not real. And so if they were to convert all of these paper value to a Bitcoin-based system, I think that might be what he's betting on. These quadrillions that we're talking about, all that doesn't exist in reality, only exists on paper.
Hey, it used to be 5% in the 60s.
Interesting. See, that makes
that's
sense.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then it came off at 1971.
And now we're down to 0.5%.
Right, because
we
it
went
was
from
all
5% to 0.5%.
Exactly, because it was all on paper. All this
Yeah.
stuff doesn't really exist. There's only so much real hard assets in the world, and then we created all this paper value that really isn't real.
I like that, man. That's a cool metric.
That we built vertically, so I guess land weirdly became more valuable as we learned to do more things with it.
Or did the dollar become less? Yes, it did somewhat, but also the dollar just got, consumed by debt. And so I think it'll be fascinating
That's
to
a Menendez move. So that was good. The 1%er, that was good.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating to see if we get a Bitcoin-based system, if we get derivatives and dividends and yield coming off of Bitcoin, and everything is value. Again, he's coming from a Bitcoin standard. Everything in the world is valued on Bitcoin. Everything is the Bitcoin standard.
Like Ben Cowan.
Yeah. Dominance goes up dramatically.
Yeah.
It all gets held, and then everything gets based off of Bitcoin. It's not outside the realm of possibility, but it would take obviously some dramatic shifts in the way the world works and has worked for quite some time.
And I think we're seeing that shift as ETF issuer Jan Vanek has way over 30% of his portfolio in Bitcoin. So
Wow.
we're seeing a massive percentage. You're going to see this on corporate balance sheets. You're going to see it in sovereign wealth funds. You're going to see it in pension. You're going to see it in everything coming out. SEC approves Grayscale's new Bitcoin mini trust ETF for New York Stock Exchange listing, introducing lower fees and tax advantages for shareholders. More adoption as well. Gary Gensler trying to not get fired.
I will say that's another thing you mentioned at the top. We got to, some people want to give him credit for approving the ETFs. Remember, he didn't approve the ETFs until he was court ordered by the Supreme Court to do it. So it's not like he chose to do it. He was forced
It's
to
like
do it.
thanking O.J. Simpson for turning himself in. Yeah, he had 87 cop cars following his Ford Bronco. All right, I'll turn myself in.
Right.
I guess.
Fine.
Exactly.
Sure.
So-
Thank you.
Yeah, it was he did everything he could to block them. The Supreme Court basically said that's unconstitutional. You cannot do this. You don't have the authority to do it. And so he let it through. And so I don't give him any credit for that. He was a hindrance for many, many years and still is to crypto. And the sooner we can get pro crypto people in seats of power making these decisions, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he, not to mention he met with FTX multiple times.
Yeah. Oh, he met. Yeah.
He's just a failure. He's an actual failure.
He's a fraud.
Justin Cantor Fitzgerald announced his plan to launch a Bitcoin financing business to provide leverage to Bitcoin investors. Again, Bitcoin DeFi, talking about this with you guys. The firm will start with $2 billion in its initial financing.
Dang.
We are excited to help unlock Bitcoin's full potential and bridging the gap between TradFi and digital assets. Incredibly bullish here. Bank of America economist, wow, breaking here, predicts how much and when the Fed will cut interest rates.
this
We're
is interesting.
all expecting this
September?
hopefully
Yeah,
in
September.
September. But Wall Street expects the Fed to cut interest rates in September in more to follow in the economy if the economy doesn't slow down. Michael Gapin, head of U.S. economics at Bank of America Securities, recently joined Morning Brief Live on Yahoo Finance to provide these insights. Gapin believes that initially there will be a 3-month discount cycle that is a gradual reduction, and Gapin said in his statement. But obviously, when you look further out, we can write these kinds of stylist baseline forecasts that assume a lot of things are going well. And I think that's true. The economy rarely develops smoothly in a straight line. So we move towards 2025 as the elections are behind us and we know what policies will pursue. Our view may change, but I think in the beginning, it makes the most sense for the Fed to cut interest rates every 3 months. We talk a lot about when the Fed will start cutting rates, but I think it's more important to the street here, which
Ooh,
I
we
know
got a
you've written
tiebreaker. I went
about
straight to-
as well in the pace that might look for more realistic, accurate.
Yeah,
way.
we got a tiebreaker. Went straight to Poly Market. If you guys recall, 2 and 3 were neck and neck. 2 and 3 were both, I want to say 34%, but now the markets are edging towards 3% because of the gaping remarks. So the market's going to be edging and gaping, folks.
Whoa.
One or the other.
Dude.
Or
Well,
gaping will leave us to edging. I don't know how I'm saying words incorrectly here. I'm going to go back to the drawing board and come back.
Well, speaking of a gaping hole, the national debt continues to just break higher and higher every single day, breaking $35 trillion today. Again, that's $103,000 of debt per person in the United States.
Fun fact, it's roughly, I want to say it was was it 3 trillion? No, around 1 trillion just in the interest payments annually, which is good. That's about 3% interest rate on our 33 trillion or 35 trillion. So 1 trillion, that's too big of a number for us to wrap our heads around. So you got to divide that by 1,000, and it's still a number that's too big to think about. It's basically 3 times a day we burn $1 billion because we go through about 3 billion a day. So every 8 hours, we're torching $1 billion just in interest payments.
Let me ask chat this, guys.
That's
Do
like
you
killing a
believe-
Dollar General or
Type,
something.
type 1 in chat if you guys think Bitcoin's going to break all-time or break $100,000. Type 1 in chat if you believe Bitcoin is going to break $100,000. Type 2 if you do not. So 1 for 100K plus, 2 for 100K or for 99,000
This year
essentially.
or this cycle?
Ever?
Just this cycle. This cycle.
This cycle,
cycle.
Next year and a half.
Next year and a half?
It could happen tonight, folks.
It could happen
won't,
tonight,
but it
but
could.
this is incredibly bullish in my opinion because high expectations for Bitcoin, but mixed for Ethereum and Solana. For only 43.7% of crypto participants expect Bitcoin to exceed 100K
That
this
increases
cycle.
the odds. Now that less than half think is happening, that like kind of increases the odds. So bullish.
Our chat's not fair because they're just the smartest out there, but indicating that the market has relatively high expectations for the largest cryptocurrency. The next most
DCA
popular
and Prey,
Bitcoin price
yes.
prediction was the 91,000 to 100K range. So most people believe they're going to be between that range, selected by 17% of survey respondents. On the other hand, 15% took a bearish view, predicting that Bitcoin will
That's
only
the
go
Jake
high
Flavor.
as 75K.
Jake Flavor said like 3 days after the top. That might have been the top, y'all. And I thought he was crazy because he likes XRP so much. Every day he seems more credible.
So 20, yeah, I mean, true and true,
Jake
but 20
Flavor says 75K is the top, maybe forever.
So 24% of the market is looking below 80K. This is 31% believe we won't break past 85K. This is really interesting to look at. So we're seeing this start to break down further and further. I think it's because of how boring the market's been, and people are just starting to really capitulate out of the market here. But interesting that's coming from CoinGecko here. Crypto
where'd they
newcomers had
find these
lower
people?
expectations for Bitcoin, with 30.9% predicting a peak price of 80K. That's insane. I want to see this poll after this Bitcoin conference.
You know what? Crypto newcomers hear all the time. You're not going to make any money off Bitcoin. You got to buy random dog or cat token.
Yeah, and they're not talking about this year. They're talking about just in general this cycle. I mean, that seems
yeah.
crazy to me. I don't know. That seems very achievable. Like if you mean ever. Again, if you think
it feels like a BlackRock sponsored question,
it just doesn't make any sense unless you're really betting on the dollar. Like I said at the top of the show, like if the dollar stays on the trajectory it has been on, there's no way Bitcoin doesn't break 100K.
Yeah.
Well,
the ghost
so
of
this
Ross
is.
Perot
I have
ain't
to say
coming to
this
save
here.
the
I
day.
think if Harris were to be elected, Bitcoin won't break 100K.
Will or won't?
Won't. It won't. Did I say will? Yeah,
Well,
it won't.
I'm kind of of two minds. I think the money printing, I think the spending and the government surplus spending, I think that would be higher under Harris. Although I think the tax on crypto would also be higher. But you got one side fighting for the price of Bitcoin to go up, and one thing kind of fighting for it to go down. And so I'm not saying it's going to be all reckless spending if the Democrats are in there, but I think it's fair to say there will be more spending. And if there's more spending, there's more printing. So in a weird way, her spending habits. Women, they love to spend. No, the spending habits might actually increase Bitcoin's price.
Which party
with
wants
Harris.
war?
I agree with DCA and Prey. I don't think Bitcoin really cares who's in office. Sure, there's things that could increase.
It does on a time frame.
There's things that could increase or decrease the speed of adoption or the speed of production here in the United States. But all in all, Bitcoin is going to do what Bitcoin does. And realistically, resistance from the government isn't going to slow it down long term. It's just going to make the United States lose. And I think that's what we've learned over these last 4 to 8 years. Bitcoin is still doing what Bitcoin does. We're just seeing other nations rise because of it, and you either jump in and participate or you get left behind. There really is no stopping it.
Well, you said it right there. It'll make the United States lose.
Yeah, it'll make us fall down the ladder.
Realize how dependent Bitcoin is still on the U.S. dollar right now. So if the United States were to lose in this grand scale, like what I'm saying, guys, I'm not saying long term. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin's not going to be stopped. We don't have to. That's not the debate here. It's when are we going to get the right regulation and the right legislation that's going to allow entrepreneurs and growth in the ecosystem?
Yes,
that is what I'm talking about here. I'm sorry. The left, it does matter in this case over the next 4 years. If Harris, these are the people behind all of the anti-crypto policies that have suppressed Bitcoin for years and years and years. And you're saying, oh, it doesn't matter who gets elected in this outcome. No, we have two different candidates. And I do believe RFK is going to he will be getting a cabinet position or become head of healthcare or CI or whatever it is. He'll be a part of some attribute in some way. But it does matter when it comes to legislation and regulation. I'm tired of, the left and right arguing over fucking abortion and all these BS, things that have been political footballs for 50, 60 years when there is one thing we all know and see, and that is the inflation. That is since 1971, when we came off the gold standard, it broke the 60% gold, was to the GDP across the globe that DZ just talked about. It allowed a kleptocracy to take place, endless money printing. That is what I'm talking about. If we get that type of administration back into this line, it's going to be more forever wars. It's going to be less regulation. It's going to be more strict regulation on crypto. It's going to only hurt all of us Bitcoiners, crypto holders. Everybody in the United States is going to struggle, and it will allow a country, into DZ's or to TJ's point here, to take over. And if that's China, guys, you don't understand. The world relies on the United States dollar. If that thing were to collapse, it does not look pretty in any other country. That means second and third world countries, while the United States might have some political issues, it's going to be a lot safer here. There's going to be civil wars and conflicts and genocide that takes place from a collapsing dollar. You have to save the US dollar to save really essentially the world at this point. People need to honestly just realize, I think, that these need to go hand in hand.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Bitcoin can support that.
I do agree with that. I mean, with us collapsing would be global devastation for a lot of second and third world countries. And I will say this, there's tons and tons and tons of money here in the United States, and getting the roadblocks cleared out of the way for people to be able to place that money into Bitcoin would dramatically speed up the rate of adoption, the price, all that sort of stuff, the headlines, the media, all of it. So it's not a matter of if, it's kind of more of a matter of when and who and what the timeline is. So I do think, yes, we will see positive regulation in the United States means open up the floodgates for a lot of the big old money that's been produced here over time, that's being held here, whether it's pension funds, whether it's hedge funds, whether it's family offices. All of those people with millions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars have been waiting for the path to be cleared. It feels like they are clearing it. Once that happens, I think we see exponential and explosive growth. And I do think that happens much quicker with pro-crypto regulation than anti-crypto regulation.
Yeah, sure. And that's my biggest thing here. I think if we get that, that's where we get an alt season, right? You guys, we haven't had an alt season here, right? We want that growth back in the States here. So, we do have a last few articles here with big Solana now tops Ethereum in 24-hour DEX volume, active addresses, fees, and revenue generation. I think Solana is a huge contender for maybe the next ETF
Let me
here.
say this. 10 of my last ETH transactions have been L2s, maybe 8 or 9 of the times, if not 10 of the times. So, you know what? All the transactions happen at the L2s.
Yeah, and they're way cheaper. And it's an interesting, I was talking with Johnny about this, looking at the blob space and kind of people saying, oh, Ethereum, basically they're foregoing some of their fees right now this was a strategic choice to let the L2s build, to let the L2s, extract some of that fee value in order to build the ecosystem out and let it actually grow and proliferate and not see everybody migrate over to another chain where they need cheaper fees in order to do it. So they're betting on volume and long term, which is why, again, I'd say that's the number one, I wouldn't even really call it a complaint or attack vector or whatever, but really just talking point against Ethereum right now versus Solana is that they gave up so much in their fee value, and it technically isn't as deflationary as it once was. That being said, I think as DeFi continues to grow, as these ETFs continue to flow in, you'll see Ethereum recover. It's still fascinating to me to watch Ethereum and Solana and how that goes with the fees, but to DZ's point, most of your Ethereum transactions that you're doing right now, if not 80-90% of them, are happening and being settled on the L2s. And so that is going to take some time to play out and see kind of what I think they made the right choice by prioritizing network effect over money today, but we're going to have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think bottom line here, guys, after Bitcoin conference, everything we learned over this weekend is it's no longer your last chance. The strategic reserve is something that no one 2 years ago would have predicted. And this is now insanely bullish for not only Bitcoin, but the overall economy. So, again, maybe you don't like crypto, maybe you don't like altcoins, maybe you don't like meme coins. We have kind of all ranges of individuals watching this channel. there is one thing that is confirmed, and that is the future of Bitcoin is only positive. There is really, unless like we said on the show, guys, a World War III or the sun blows up, which would just kill us all anyways. The adoption curve is only up and to the right for Bitcoin at these ranges. So guys, make sure you guys hit that like button today. And if you guys, already haven't, do this, make sure you guys go do this in the description below. I want to pull up Arculish's chart one more time. Guys, if you don't have self-custody, I have to say it again, okay? Donald Trump did say he'd be looking to protect this, but self-custody is the most important thing on the planet right now. One tap, total security, guys. If you have your crypto on an exchange, it is not safe. Not your keys, not your crypto. No matter what, there will be another bear market. That is how economic cycles work, guys. You have an era of prosperity and then an era of consolidation. It kind of just does this step up and to the right, if you look out on a long enough time scale. So get that one tap total security, guys. You do not want to be the person that loses your money simply because you were not being secure, guys. Use DC10 in the description below, and we will see you guys at 4 p.m. today.